First of all, it seems slightly ironic to be stood up here discussing stress and stress reduction when obviously my stress levels are personally rising quite substantially. And I was going to start off this talk by saying a deep bow of gratitude and thank you to Nikki for the opportunity. I'm not so certain right now. What I'm also going to do, apologies, I'm going to be the only speaker to be using cars just to prompt me and to remind me. I've got a great habit of digressing quite wildly, so this will just help me keep on track. So first of all, I think it's important just to explain what brings me to this point of standing on the stage in front of you and who I am. First of all, I'm a human being, or at least I am. Last time I looked in the mirror, I'm most certainly a Guernseyman. I was born on the island, schooled on the island, and I've lived here for the majority of my life. And you can probably tell that because of the short legs, thick ankles, and slightly webbed feet. So I'm also a chiropractor. I also practice meditation, and I also teach mindfulness courses on the island. But I'm also a husband, and I'm also a father of three. Now, for me today, the perspective that I'm talking to you from is most certainly as a human being. It's most certainly from the perspective of teaching mindfulness courses, but more importantly for me, it's from the perspective of being a father of three. Now, what I'd like to do today is give a brief outline initially at the project that Nikki and myself, in conjunction with the education department, are working on to bring mindfulness to all island schools. And I'll initially begin by discussing that in a little bit more detail. But what I'm then going to go on to do is say why I think that this is a completely flawed plan. Now, you can guess that advertising and big business was never going to be my strong point at this point. But what I'm going to hopefully try and explain and redeem myself is that it will only be of use if it creates a fundamental shift and a change in the way that we educate our children on the island. And this little quote is my mantra at the present time. And it's within difficulty there lies opportunity. And I really, really, truly believe that in Guernsey we're poised at a very, very interesting, there's an interesting point we're having at the present and discussion about school provisions, how we educate our children. And I really, really do think that it's a perfect opportunity for us to just stop, just pause, and just think and open our minds a little bit wider. And I think mindfulness may well be of benefit to both our schools and to our wider community. Now, in this discussion, I'm just going to ask you to just bear with me and agree with me on two points. Now, what I'm not asking for is some sort of blind faith. My father always taught me that there's nothing more dangerous than blind faith. But I do genuinely believe that there's evidence out there to substantiate the points that I'm going to make. And the first point is that we're seeing increased levels of stress within our community. We're seeing it locally, we're seeing it nationally, we're seeing it globally. Nobody's saying otherwise, that's good. Okay. What we're seeing is increased levels of drug and alcohol dependencies. We've heard Ben and we've heard other people talk about these things. We're seeing increased levels of depression, self-harming. We're seeing anorexia, obesity. We're seeing the whole gambit of stress-related disorders on the rise. And what we're also seeing is that they're coming at a younger and a younger age. The second point that I'm going to make is that mindfulness techniques have been proven to reduce stress. And I think my colleague just earlier has started to lay down some of the evidence there. But we've got, 2,500 years of people practicing these meditation techniques. And now with sort of modern imaging from sort of Professor Nutt and other people, what we're starting to see is that modern science is informing those 2,500 years of practice. There's something useful in it in reducing stress levels. Okay. So now on to mindfulness in Guernsey. Those 2 points were most certainly at the forefront of Nikki and my discussions with the education department. And we're very, very fortunate the Chief Executive of Education, John Buckland, and the head educational psychologist, Karen Hazan, are most certainly very engaged in this and very interested in this and very passionate about this. And the idea is, what we're going to do is bring a mindfulness course into all areas of education. What we want to do is we want to start at the top down, from senior management through to heads, to teachers, and then down to the children. And the course that we've been using and working with is one developed by an organisation called the Mindfulness in Schools programme. And this is a collaboration between Willem Kuiken in Exeter, Richard Burnett, Chris Cullen, we've got Mark Williams, we heard earlier about before, and also Sarah Silverton and her colleagues at Bangor. And what they've done is that they've developed an 8-week course specifically for those working within education, also for those at secondary school, and then a shorter 6-week course for those at primary school. And together, Nikki and myself have started implementing this. So we've had 30 members of staff at senior management and education from chief executive downwards take the course. We've taught 20 teachers at Lamar de Carteret School, 15 or 16 teachers at the grammar school. We've taught Elizabeth College, Ladies College, St Martin's School. And as with other findings, we're finding that it's beneficial. There are most certainly benefits to these courses. The children are finding it useful in reducing stress levels and coping, but also the teachers are as well. However, as I alluded to at the start, this is problem. There's a problem here, because if we wheel this in as some sort of initiative just to try and help the children and help the teachers that are frankly just not coping, then it's doomed for failure. It will not work, I can almost guarantee it. What we need to do is stop addressing the symptoms and actually start questioning what are the causes for these stresses. And the thing is, we've all got our ideas with regards to what causes stress and why we're seeing this increased levels of stress in our community. And we've heard from, with regards to the news and the way we consume, it may well be social media, connectivity, and we're constantly doing. And it may well be that this is at least feeding it in part. But for me, one of the biggest problems is the way that we're educating our children, the schools. In what it's not doing, I'm not saying that it's the actual cause of the problem itself, but what it surely isn't doing is it's not helping it. And most certainly, we're not providing the tools and the techniques to give them resilience. The problem that we have is that our current view of education is essentially defined and constrained by the reliance on standard academic testing. And I think these two little slides sum it up quite nicely. You may well have seen these before. They're quite new to me. Okay, and if you all read that one, the next one, which I love as well. And this is the problem. This really is the nub of it. What we believe is that, in Guernsey, we pass the 11 plus. You go to the best school. Let's face it. We use the term pass and fail even. But we try and stray away from that. X number of GCSEs. You have to have maths, English, a science preferably, maybe a language, that would be useful. Get your A-levels, you go to university, you get your degree, and there we have it. Their success and happiness will follow. This is an educational and social dogma. It's a belief that we hold on to as being incontrovertibly true in the face of absolutely no evidence at all. And it's exactly what my father warned me to be most careful of. It's blind faith. Deep down, we all know that this is false, but we still cling on to it. And I can't quite work out whether we cling on to it through fear of the unknown, fear of change, or fear of the system failing the children and the community that it's meant to serve. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it is failing, and it must change. Our children are becoming increasingly stressed, disillusioned, disengaged, dissatisfied with the current system. And if we look around, employers now are reflecting this. What they're saying is that, look, these children, they're not fit for purpose. We can't use, they haven't got the skills that we require. And this is why the likes of Google, Microsoft, and other companies, what they're doing is that they're shifting away from that focus and on academic achievement. And what they actually want to do is they want to know about the person. They want to know why they are so passionate about this. What skills have they got that we need? The problem is that the current system essentially is determined both by politicians and the educators. It comes from the top down. And what we need to do is that actually what we need is the world to define the syllabus and the educators to facilitate. And that's what we have to do. And that's the opportunity that we have. So how do we begin to create this change? Well, for me, I think we have to bear in mind and reflect on this. What we contribute to the world has everything to do with the way that we interact with the world within us. If we can begin to understand how our past experiences, our present judgments, and our future expectations, how they influence the way that we act and the choices that we make, then we may well be within chance of changing things. And what I'd like to do now is just briefly read a poem or a verse, and this is supposedly written on the tomb of an Anglican bishop in the Westminster Abbey. And it's entitled, "Start with Yourself." When I was young and free and my imagination had no limits, I dreamed of changing the world. As I grew older and wiser, I discovered the world would not change. So I shortened my sight somewhat and decided to change only my country. But it too seemed immovable. As I grew into my twilight years, in one last desperate attempt, I settled for changing only my family, those closest to me. But alas, they would have none of it. And now, as I lie on my deathbed, I suddenly realize if I'd only changed myself first, then by example, I would have changed my family. From their inspiration and encouragement, I would have then been able to better my country. And who knows, I may have even changed the world. So there we have it. If we can hold that in mind, then we can go to the most important question. What do we want our children to look like as human beings? From the answers that we gain from that, then we come up with a different definition of what success is. Then we can come up with an education system that is fit for purpose, one that will actually, which will come up with solutions. I want my children to be happy. I want them to feel valued. I want them to be passionate about what they do. And I want them to understand the talents within them, and I want to understand the world outside of them. And I really do see mindfulness and the techniques that we're talking about today as being pivotal to that. In helping our children, helping the teachers, helping the wider community, and helping the politicians, and guiding them to make the right choices based on this very question. My time's up. Thank you very much.